Good afternoon. Or good morning, I should say. My name is Abby Redmond. I am a curriculum director in Southern Indiana in Warwick County. My role today is simply as host. I am on the instructional tactic team for the Keep Indiana Learning Group. And it is with great pleasure today that I introduce you to Kara Guiff. Kara is going to be presenting on self-regulation. We can get them there. So at this time, I will hand it over to Kara. Just one note for any of the participants, please feel free to unmute if you have a question or would like to make a comment. And I will also be monitoring the chat room through the Whova app. And thank you, Kara.
Hi, everyone. So glad you're here. I love to talk about this topic because it does so much to help teachers and students. And so that's the goal. We want to help everybody, right? If you would like a copy of the presentation where all the links are active that I'm going to talk about today, you're welcome to take a picture of this right here, this bit.ly Guiff SR, or write it down, whatever you want. I'll stay on this slide just a moment to let you do that. And then that way you'll be able to follow along with me and you can get all the live links so you don't have to take as many notes. So go ahead and grab that link if you would like it. And we are going to talk today about how you actually can get your students to self-regulate. You can get them to the possibility of it. I think in so many times we think of like, okay, that's the goal, but are we really going to get there? And yes, these strategies I'm going to talk about today really do help kids get there, where they're thinking more about it themselves and helping themselves regulate before they lose control. This is me. I have just finished year 31 in teaching, and all that time spent in special education, most of it at the same district. And I worked 10 years in elementary resource and then 29 years in junior high resource. And I now teach junior high, senior high at White's Alternative Bridge Program, which is a program designed for struggling students that is almost completely virtual. So I really love that position there. I just finished year 31, like I said, and then here's my email if you would like to get in touch with me. I also have a Facebook group that is very engaged and we have fun in there. We share stuff in there. And I encourage you to check out Thriving in SPED. If you have the presentation, the link will take you right there. If not, if you search on Facebook for Thriving for SPED, you will find it because there's only one of me. Also, if you'd like to join my email list, this link will take you to a form to do that. I email stuff about free and low cost professional development, items relating to helping teachers in their jobs, and sometimes my paid offers that I have. But currently I have a free 12-day summit going on where you can join for free and get access to 24 presentations of professional development. So if you're interested in that, those two links are available for you. Self-regulation. The most important thing to take away today is the realization that you must teach it explicitly, just like we teach everything else explicitly. Students who struggle with things need more direct instruction in it. So I highly advocate for doing that. And we sometimes think, well, students know how to behave or they should know by this age. And that happens a lot of time for teachers, that they just kind of think that in their heads and they don't realize where along the line did we teach that? Well, maybe preschool, kindergarten, first grade. And then we teach it less and less as kids get older. But our students who struggle in those areas of executive functioning and self-regulation, they never quite got it and they need more explicit instruction in it. Just like if they're having difficulty reading, they need more explicit instruction in how to read. So the first thing that's important to explicitly teach students when you're trying to help them with self-regulation is the vocabulary of feeling, because many of these students have trouble identifying anything besides happy, sad, angry. Well, there are a plethora of words to use to describe our feelings, and we need students to have access to that so that they can say exactly what they're feeling. If a student is feeling frustrated or overwhelmed, that's not the same as angry. And they need to begin knowing that. So I have linked here several sources for you to get some lists of words to help your students. The same way you would provide them with a list of vocabulary words. If they're having trouble figuring out what an adjective is or a noun, we can provide them with these lists of feeling words. So this is one that you'll have access to, which divides it by pleasant and unpleasant, and it's quite a big list. And then I have this list for younger students or students who that big list might be a little overwhelming for, that is actually more like a synonym list, and it's designed with bigger print, so it's not so overwhelming to look at. And I do like about this list that there are spaces, and those spaces are there purposely because kids might have their own words in their own language that they use to describe something that means a word to them, that it means something to them, but we need to let them use their vocabulary for it. So like I had a student one year and she would just say, just feel all gobbledygook today. And I was like, what in the world? What does that mean? Well, when we broke it down, that meant that she just was feeling confused and not sure of herself. And so she used that word and we knew of the word and allowed her to put that in her vocabulary. So that's two sources for that. Then this is this huge list that's online. And there's some things I like about it because when you've got the word, there's an image and also a sentence. And so it can help students really start distinguishing between, am I bored or am I sad or am I depressed? And what that means for students, or am I anxious or am I angry? Am I cold? And it's just a really nice way for students to look through words and be able to say, oh, I don't know, I'm just upset and I don't know why. And then maybe they'll see this jealous and they'll go, that's it, I'm jealous because at my locker, Susan was talking to Patsy instead of me. And I felt myself get angry. But when they see the list of words, they're like, oh, this was it, I was jealous. And so this is a really nice resource to go to as well. Also, because words come with intensity, I have this intensity chart linked for you where it's taken and said, these are strong words to say happy, moderate words to say happy, and mild words to say happy. That's probably pretty small. Let me see if I can make that bigger for you. There, that might help a little bit. And so I like that there's a color and I like that there is a word that defines these. So it can help students start deciding, do we really feel fantastic or am I just elevated or am I just happy or am I just good? I'm just okay. They're all positive, but they're different levels of that positive. And as adults and students who don't struggle with the vocabulary feeling, they use the right words when they should. And so students sometimes will say, well, I'm just so angry, Mrs. Guiff. And a teacher or a peer even might say to them, well, what do you have to be angry about? Well, because angry is not really the right word. And they're searching for frustrated or anxious or something like that. And it hurts all of their social interactions. So we want to make sure our students are getting the vocabulary. And then we have a really nice smiley face feeling guide down here as well. And this is so helpful. It doesn't matter if students are readers or not. When they are out of regulation, upset about something, sometimes seeing a picture helps them to figure out and communicate with somebody, this is how I feel. I know I've worked with, and you probably have too, many students who have felt angry about things, but then when you really get down to it, they weren't angry, but they didn't know any of the word, but they stomp, they bang things. And then when they see a big list of feelings, the one they point to is surprising sometimes because it had nothing to do with how I would think is anger. I used to have a student who expressed anger every time he felt like he was left out. And so when he would finally get a feelings list and be able to say what it was, he would say, I'm lonely or I feel left out. And then this anger happens that didn't make sense to the people around him, but made sense when he could communicate better. Whoop. Then I also recommend playing games and adapting them so that the feeling words are the things you have to do. So there's games like Jenga, and when you can have feelings words or images on the Jenga pieces. So when they pull it out, then they act out the word and the others try to guess, or vice versa like that. You can throw dice and have images of emoji faces on them instead, get some blank dice, or playing that game Headbands where you have a card on your head and you're trying to get people to guess it, but what if all of the cards were feelings? And so now we're practicing with our faces and with our words and vocabulary to get out there what our feelings are. And then there's this really nice online feelings game that is free. The only thing I don't like about it is there's not a boy to choose from. It's woman, man, or girl. I don't know what happened, but so if you're a boy, there's not one to choose, but you can choose all faces too. And it's super simple. It just shows them some faces and gives them a word. So who is interested? And they'll choose one. If they get it wrong, it will say, try again. And if they get it right, they'll have the word again. So they're like, oh yeah, that's interested. So even if they guess, they can remember, oh, that's interested. So they can do that the next time. And I would sometimes have students do this with an instructional assistant or with other students as peer helpers so that they could discuss it more than just the clicking that might happen if they do it themselves. But they'll do so many and then they'll get a chance to go back and practice ones that they missed. But it's just a free resource, so might as well take advantage of free. And my last advice about it is use best practice and teach this feelings vocabulary the same way you teach anything else you teach your students. You'll hear me say that lots today. So what's the next part we need to explicitly teach them? Well, we need to explicitly teach them about the brain. And so I'm going to stop presenting real quick so I can do this part for you because it's much more fun that way if you can see me big. So the Dr. Siegel is a famous scientist, psychologist who studied the brain a lot. And he came up with something called the hand model of the brain to help everyone understand what's going on in your brain when something happens that causes you a little bit of dysregulation. And so I'm going to just teach it to you the exact same way that I would teach it to my students. And it doesn't really matter if my students are preschool, kindergarten, or if my students are juniors and seniors in high school. You would introduce this the same exact way because when people don't have knowledge of something, they need the most elementary level of it. Of course, your manner of being might be a little bit different, but the way that I was introduced to this is somebody taught it to me at an adult professional development. So it doesn't matter what age you teach. Just imagine that this is going to help you understand your brain better. So the hand can be the model of the brain. So just put your hand out with mine. I want you to do it with me if you can. It's going to help you remember it better. And so when we make a fist, this is representing the brain that's inside our head. And then this is our brainstem. So we're going to make the fist with the thumb inside and the fingers on top. Okay. So this is the brainstem, and this is the start of your brain. And inside our brain is broken up to two parts. It has the top part, which is represented by the fingers, which is your prefrontal cortex. Can you say that with me? Prefrontal cortex. Good job. Okay, so this is the brainstem. What is it? Brainstem, good. And this is an image of our, you got it, brain. And then the fingers that come down are the top part of the brain called the prefrontal cortex. Everybody say it with me. And so you just do that until your students get the hang of it, okay? And then we'll say, okay, underneath the prefrontal cortex, if we open this up, then we see the lower part of the brain. And this little piece of the brain right here, your thumb, is called the amygdala. Can you say that? Amygdala. Everybody wiggle your amygdala. Show me your amygdala. Nice job. So our brain is put together in a really amazing way. The prefrontal cortex covers up the amygdala to protect it. Our amygdala needs some protection. And the reason is this prefrontal prefrontal cortex part of your brain, it's the part of your brain that lets you think and make good decisions. And the amygdala is the part that makes you feel things. And so it's your emotions, if you're happy or sad and that kind of thing. So the top part of your brain wants to protect that amygdala to keep it from feeling bad, right? So it's its job to protect it. But sometimes something happens and your amygdala starts feeling things. So maybe you're walking in the hall and you trip and you fall and you look up and you think everybody is laughing at you. And so your amygdala is going, you need to get out of here. This is a terrible situation. It's horrible. Everybody's looking at you. And your prefrontal cortex is trying to say, no, it's okay. It's okay. But sometimes it can't keep it under control. And so bam, and it flips that up. And that's called flipping your lid. And you might have done that before. And people might have said to you before, you need to settle down and quit flipping your lid. Flipping your lid is something that we say in the United States that means getting angry or blowing your top or settling in a puddle of tears. Like you can't function because you're so upset. And so this top part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, is like, oh no, I don't know what to do because this is going out of control. Okay. So our job is to help our brain know how to get the prefrontal cortex back down. And when we can do that successfully, when we feel it start to flip like this, we'll be able to do things to get it back under control. Okay. And so that is how the hand represents your brain. We have, say it with me, we have the brain stem, good. Then we have the brain, the prefrontal cortex. I know that's a mouthful, right? And the amygdala. And what's the job of the prefrontal cortex? Sorry, I'm talking too fast. What's the job of that? Yes, it protects the amygdala. You got it. And our brains, the top part of its job is just to keep you calm. You got it. And so then you go on to say things like, so who's ever had that flipped your lid feeling? And kids will share all kinds of stories because of course we've all had a time where we flipped our lid, right? And so when my mentor taught this to me, her name is Dr. Lori Desautel, and I believe she had some sessions at this conference as well. And she's probably teaching some of these same things, but she's fantastic. But when she taught it to me, she shared a story of a preschool group she was doing this with. And this preschooler came up to her after class and said to her, Miss Lori, I think my dad amygdala was out of control last night. And so you're like, it doesn't matter how old you are. It's nice to know that there's something going on in your brain. It also gives our students a real sense of power because now it's not on them that they lose control. It's something real that's happening in their brain. And so they separate from it a little bit and then don't feel so much shame and like, I should have done better to keep track of myself because they know there's something going on in their brain. And once they realize that, they have hope that there's something you can teach them and they're willing to try to learn it. And so that's the rest of the things we're going to talk about today. So I hope that was helpful. I do see there's some things in the chat. Abby, is there something I need to answer? Or is that from when we were chatting?
No, I'm just putting information in there in regard to how to get to your materials, okay. And then also that the chat is open in Whova.
Okay, I just want to make sure I didn't need to mention something. So in the presentation, if you got the link, I'll show it again at the end if you missed it. There is a 2-minute video I linked to where this wonderful lady teaches about the hand model and puts some more brain science in it even than I did. But that's a nice video you can use if you don't feel comfortable teaching it yourself. And then I've also linked to Dr. Siegel himself explaining his hand model because he invented it. He does the best. Then there's another way that they decided, Dr. Siegel and his partner, Bryson, to think of the brain like an upstairs and downstairs. So it's like the upstairs job is to think and reason. The downstairs job is the emotion. and the upstairs has to protect the downstairs. So it's the same kind of thing, but a different way to do it. And so some kids grasp more with one than the other. And so there is a blog post with a good explanation of the upstairs and downstairs model, and then a 7-minute video explaining to help students understand why they lose control. I actually use this video for my students to watch. I assign it in Google Classroom, or we watch it together in class. And then it's there for them to go back to when they forget that there's something happening in their brain, when they're starting to learn to self-regulate and they're like, oh, I messed up. It's like, it's because your brain, it didn't feel safe. Remember, we can help that. And so they like to go back and watch that. And I've worked mostly with 7th through 10th graders when I'm doing this. And so they like to know, oh yeah, there's something I can watch and go back to. And then there is a whole series of things about the amygdala hijack, which is part of what I was explaining. When the amygdala goes crazy, it hijacks the brain and causes that flip your lid thing. So there's a 3-minute video on fight, flight, freeze, response, and a 2-minute video that would work better for younger students. You'll have to watch them and make your decisions, but the amygdala hijack one is really good. This is just another strategy that I suggest to use when you're explicitly teaching about self-regulation. We do think alouds all the time when we're teaching reading strategies or how to find answers in a text. Science and social studies teachers are really good at this. But we can also do think alouds about self-regulation. So you might come in one day, and whether it's social skills time or whether it's the warm-up before you start your English lesson, and we always are sharing to build a relationship with our students. So you might say, oh, last night, I couldn't sleep at all, and I'm so tired today, it's hard for me to stay awake. So I really appreciate you guys having patience with me. And I really wanted to say this morning, I just am gonna call in sick because I'm too tired to work, but I thought, no, I can overcome this. I can calm down my brain and keep my amygdala in check, and I'll be able to make it through the day. I'm glad I can do that. So if you see me take a deep belly breath today, it might be because I am trying to calm myself down. My patience is hard when I'm tired. Have you ever felt like that? Yeah, me too. And so you want the kids to see first of all, it happens to everyone. It doesn't just happen to kids that struggle with this. And secondly, what your thought process is to overcome it. And that will help model to them. And so you can just think up little scenarios like this one, where kids can work through it and see each other practice it before it's a real situation and they have to, because we know it's going to take time and lots of practice. Okay, routines and procedures, my nuts and bolts stuff. I always think making looks like, sounds like, feels like charts are a fabulous way to talk about the feeling word. And so I have students create this at the beginning of the year. It doesn't matter if it's my math class, my English class, my study hall, or my social skills class. We're all talking about this. So what's it going to look like if you're regulated? What's it going to sound like when we're regulated? And what it's going to feel like when you're regulated? Because we need to know that that feels good, right? And so then what is it going to look like if you're not regulated? What's it going to sound like if you're not regulated, and what's it going to feel like? And so a personalized skill check is a great way for students to start figuring out that this is what they need to help them know where they are on that level and when do they need a self-regulation strategy. So if you're familiar with the 5-point scale, that is a regulation thing. And I know Zones of Regulation has something like that as well, so that kids can start to figure out where they are on there so that they know how they feel. But what I found from my students work the best, I'm going to stop sharing again so you can see this, is these regulation card packs that we made with the students. So we would have students go through and look at a bunch of emojis and a bunch of those words lists that I showed you earlier. And they would pick out the words that they wanted to put in their little flip book. And then our kids, because we were junior high and high school, they switched classes. And so this was something they could easily put onto their Chromebook or in their pocket and have whenever they needed it when they ran out of the words they wanted to say. So it just takes 5 colors of cards. And so they need just one green one. And green, they can put several words on there. This one says good, great, peaceful, and they can draw symbols, or they can use stickers, they can cut and paste things. But when their green card is up, we know things are good. And so they may or may not want to have that out when they're green. But if a teacher walks by and sees green, we know we're good. We don't have to worry about their state of being right then. And then we have some blue ones that, like, maybe you're not like, okay, when we think of the levels of okay, you're not like the best of okay, but you're okay, you're calm, like there's nothing really bothering you. And this student had a little calm symbol that meant something to them. And then I'm feeling relaxed or okay, and that's okay as well. And then what happens on the back is, if the students would go to a blue card from a green, they would have a list of things that might help them get back to green. And so on the back, this student picked, I probably should get my fidget out, or maybe I should do some 5-finger breathing. And that might get me back to that green place. But they also know that if they stay in blue, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with staying blue. So you have to explain this to all the students. And if they were feeling relaxed, they might want to get a piece of gum or a hand massage if they feel like they're starting to get toward that yellow level. And so then level, yellow, now we're like going up that, okay, so now I probably better do something to regulate myself because I'm starting to feel the way inside that means I could be dysregulated quickly. And remember, we've already done that teaching, so we know about that. And so we've got nervous and anxious, and then on the back, they should take some deep breaths or ask to go get a drink. So for many of our students, just removing themselves from the environment helps them regulate. And when they come back in, they're better. And I know you've probably all experienced this too. You start to get upset with something, and just walking away from it and coming back can be better. And this way the student doesn't have to say, I'm upset with you, I'm frustrated with what you're telling me, or I'm frustrated that my pencil broke, or I'm frustrated that this worksheet looks overwhelming, or I'm frustrated that the person in front of me has this perfect hair because her mom did it and my mom didn't have time this morning. Like, we have no idea what's going on in their head. And we really don't need to. We just need to know that they're frustrated about something. And so if they're frustrated and then they flip that over and they do one of the things on the back, they can leave that up, and they can do that without permission. They have to know the procedure to do that. So whether that's they put this card out and there's a place in the room that these items are, and they can go get something to help them regulate, or if they're taking the drink path, that there's a place they can go get that, put it on their desk so everybody knows. But the idea is to not have to have this verbal interrogation is what it feels like to a child when they're starting to dysregulate. And so we want to get them a way to regulate without having any verbal conversation with the adults. And as adults, so many times we just want to know what's going on. We're not upset, but it feels to somebody who's in dysregulation like we're upset, or they might shout at you because of their upset. And now it is a problem because now they shouted at the teacher. So it's really important to follow those procedures. And on the back of this one, it has signal for a 3-minute break. So with this teacher, with this particular student, he had a signal, like he would hold up 3 fingers, and then the teacher would nod when they saw it, and then he would go set a timer and take a 3-minute break. And so we've got yellow, and then orange is the next color. If we see orange and there is a second adult in the room, at this point, that adult is probably moving in a little bit closer proximity to a student. Because if we get to orange, like they tried whatever's yellow, or maybe they just went from blue to orange or red. It happens, right? We don't always have all the steps in between. So orange and red means we just need to probably keep a little better eye, just because we want to make sure they're not doing something harmful to themselves or others. But those are things like worried, grumpy, sad. You know, they're words that have a lot bigger depth to them. And so the things on the back of there might be more like, go to the amygdala reset area, which I'll explain what that is later. It's like a first aid station for self-regulation. I might journal, I might color. It's going to be a longer piece of information. I might take a 5-minute music break with my preferred device. And then red, obviously, okay, red needs some intervention right now and probably require the teacher to help the student decide what to do because they can't even think through their choices pretty much at this point. So these little flip charts are really helpful and amazing. So I just made them. There's no like set pattern to it. And the best thing to do is to let the kids choose this. So you just go on and find some pictures of emojis, and there'll be some resources like that shared with you, but there's no fancy to making this. You could make it with a staple pad. You could have a file folder that had everything in it, whatever works for your environment. Trying to share my screen again. There we go. The amygdala reset station that we mentioned. This is one of the best pieces of advice you will get, and it came from Dr. Lori Desautels. So you may have heard her talking about it in another session, but there's never too many times to say how much this is needed. And you'll notice I say, don't forget the Toastios, and I'll go back and explain that when I show this picture. These are some examples of some amygdala first aid stations that teachers have created. And this teacher just had a bucket with some items in it that kids knew they could go to get if they needed a chance to regulate. This teacher has some crates with things inside it. So, and then there were some instructions here to tell them what to do when they got there. There probably is an instruction paper in here, or else the procedure is gone over so much that kids understand it. And here we have a breathe, relax area that they've set up for kids to regulate. So it really can be anything that you have. It does not have to be a separate room. It does not have to be a completely blocked off state. Oh, and sometimes it's helpful if you have a study chair or a piece of furniture where you can at least block one side of it, because when kids get very dysregulated, sometimes they think everybody's staring at them. And so if you can block the view of the class from where they are, where you can still see, then that's helpful. But again, not necessary. You work with what you have. But in these first aid stations are things like music they can listen to. There might be an iPad with certain calming activities or games that they can do for their 5 minutes. Coloring, drawing, sand timers, different textures to touch, because sometimes we know that rubbing those different textures, like different seating, maybe a rocker. At our school, a lot of people have those hammock swings kind of for kids, and so we would have a hammock swing in ours and a bean bag. And it's really just a place that they can get comfortable and feel more connected to themselves and begin to focus on regulating their brain so their amygdala doesn't take over. But there is tons of research about how chewing and feeling the texture in your mouth is a huge aid to regulation. Well, we used to years ago, before it was so bad to give kids candy. I'm old, I've been around a while, right? I told you I just finished year 31. Like those dum-dum suckers, that was like such a popular thing, because now they were fidgeting with something with their finger and they had it in their mouth and they twirled it around and they could crunch if they wanted. And it really does regulate you to do that. But gone are those days where we can usually just give candy like that. And so Dr. Lori said to get Cheerios. Well, I call them Toastios because I'm not paying for the name brand. And so you can get a giant box for $1 at the dollar store or at most supermarkets, the generic brand, and they will last a long time. And just get those little tiny Dixie cups. Now, COVID made that a little more difficult. We had to pre-put them in baggies so kids could grab a baggie, you know, so whatever restrictions you're still under, just make sure you're following that. But some kids would come in, and sorry, I need to back up a minute. It would be part of the amygdala reset or self-regulation station, but also it was free access to anybody in the room whenever they wanted. Because if you don't do that, then you have kids being like, well, they get to eat and I don't, which is, we all know fair isn't equal and all of that, but it just heads off a lot of trouble if you just say in the beginning, I know that for lots of reasons, having a snack might be helpful to you. So it's over there, but it's plain. Don't get the honey crunch. Don't get the vanilla. Just get the plain, okay? Because the point of it is it to be crunching something, not to be having a flavorful snack. But in doing it that way, it works in two ways. So one, it works as a regulation tool. But secondly, it can help you identify kids who are not getting enough food at home. And we identified several kids who they didn't have food in their house for breakfast and nobody knew it. Like you wouldn't, they're not the kind of kids who you automatically assume don't have enough food at home. And so it's an awesome, if you see the same child day after day after day getting that, because it's really not that tasty of a treat, then you can do some investigation, bring your social worker in, whatever procedures you have for that. And so it works as that as well, but it has to be easy access where you don't have to have an adult to get access to it. And so what I started doing was having an area in my room that I put a sign in, and it was really powerful to have this sign up that said, "Take what you need, I trust you." So think about the power of that for a student who doesn't feel like they belong anywhere, who people accuse them of things all the time, maybe rightfully so, but they don't feel trusted at all. And so putting that simple phrase, "I trust you," really makes it a powerful thing to have that available to kids at will instead of having to ask for permission from an adult. And so you have to, if you work in a room with teaching assistants, you have to get everybody on the same page. When I first implemented this, it was really hard for my teaching assistants to understand, like if a kid went up there 3 times in an hour and got another cup of Cheerios, they wanted to be like, they're just doing that because they can. And so I had to really do a lot of upfront training to say that that's okay with me. We're saying it's okay. We put that on the sign. And so we're not going to worry about if they do that. If they do that several days in a row, I'm going to have a conversation with them about it because I want to know what the reason is. But let's not assume it's just a waste time. Let's not have that in our head up front. And the other part of the sign that says, "Take what you need," helps you to have that conversation later if it happens. Because there are students, and I have a son, he's 35 now, but we adopted him when he was 8. And he was in foster care from the time he was 1.5 until he was 8. When he came to live with us, he had a shoebox of his own belongings. It was so sad. And so he never had enough food his entire life. So when that happens to you as a child, you don't get over that. You don't grow out of the fear that you won't have food. And so some students will take food because they're afraid they might never get food again. And so my son does that. It's hard even today at 35 years old, when he goes to a buffet, he has trouble not taking just everything in sight because it's a psychological thing that's in you. And so we need to investigate why, not be judgmental. If they've been adopted by an affluent family and you know they have enough food, enough clothing, that doesn't have anything to do with it. It's a psychological response. So I just caution you to be careful with that, but make sure everybody's on the same page because it's amazing. I had one boy at my new school, he's a 8th grader. And when he came into my class, just to observe before we actually had him working with me, he saw that sign and he saw that there was, in our school, the water is disgusting from the fountains. Like, I won't drink it. And I'm like, if I don't want to drink it, I feel bad if they have to drink it. So I just would bring pitchers of water in from my house and have cups there and they could have a drink. Again, this was pre-COVID. And so he saw that there was water and these Tostios over there, and he saw the sign. And when it was time for him to say, "Do you have any questions?" the first question he asked was, "Do you really mean that?" I said, "Do you mean what?" And he said, "Do you really mean like I can take what I need and you trust me that I'm not stealing it?" And this is a child who was on the verge of being expelled for stealing, which is why he was being put into my program. And so it made all the difference in the world with our relationship starting out in that beginning, just because I had that word, "I trust you." And so it really can be powerful and helpful for students. They have to know we believe in them. Then there's also a link to a free webinar here, which is by Dr. Desautel. So if you want to learn more about self-regulation, trauma-informed instruction, the amygdala reset, her stuff is really good. And then this is a link to the procedures I used in my room to run kids through if they had a meltdown, how we would get them back on track and back into working. So those things are there for you to grab. Okay, so now how will students know when they are regulated? Again, we talked about having the looks like, sound like, feels like, and there needs to be a checkout procedure. So after I do whatever I need to do to regulate, then I need to come back over here and make sure I'm really regulated. So what if that 5-minute timer wasn't enough? So there needs to be a way for them to say, yeah, I'm feeling calmer, or no, I'm not. And we go to another 3 minutes or whatever we do. And yes, you can think there are kids that'll just keep saying no, so they don't have to go back to class. But you know what? I really had that happen. I worked with 7th, 8th, 9th graders. They didn't enjoy their instruction, but they really didn't want to stay there longer than they needed to for the most part. And so we have to be in tune to our students, or we're just setting them up to fail when they reintegrate back with the class instruction or whatever's happening. So they need to have an appointment, possibly. If they get to orange or red in our system at my school, they had to debrief with one of the special education team before they reintegrated back into the group, because there's some serious stuff. Now, you'll notice when you look at my procedure page, that doesn't mean we're going to do it right this minute, but they might have to work in a different environment until we have time to do it, and we both can do it. So super important. And our special ed director and our school counselors were part of the team. So there was lots of people that knew how to do this debriefing. It wasn't just the 2 special education teachers. So what kind of tools? The fun part. So some tools that can help you maintain regulation for students. And you heard me say some of them when I was going through these task cards. But deep belly breathing, and don't just think deep breathing, look it up on Google. There's actual procedure to deep belly breathe correctly. And so you want to make sure if you're telling students to take deep breaths that they're doing it correctly to get the advantage of it. Fidgets, all kinds of fidgets. Like, I know when I get nervous, like messing with something is helpful. So let them have access, teach them how to use it appropriately. The moving away, I gave the example of the ask to get a drink. Positive affirmation and positive self-talk are so important, because the things we say to ourselves are horrible. We say things to ourselves that we would never say to anybody else. Like, I make a mistake and I'm like, gosh, Kara, what's wrong with you? I wouldn't say that to a student. And so we got to think our students, whatever we're hearing come out of their mouth, they're probably calling themselves that even worse. And so we want to train them to get some positive talk in. And this is just a link to some ideas for positive self-talk with some situations that you can teach kids. So the situation is that you're giving a talk to the class, and the negative self-talk would be, they're just going to laugh and tease me when I do it. But instead, the positive self-talk will be, I can do it. Or I might even add there, I can ignore people if they laugh and tease. Like, so what's going to happen if it happens? Have a plan in place. It's okay, so that it's not a jump. But this is really powerful, and then gives you some space to think of some for your students that are specific to their situation. So it's a nice way to teach that. And then a lot of students calm down. A lot of people do with a favorite photo, smell, or texture. Like, I love the movie theater popcorn. I have nothing but happy memories in movie theaters. So if I smell a big, strong popcorn smell, it makes me happy. So maybe I have some smelly stickers. Maybe I have a leftover baggie that used to have something in it that smells good to me that won't rot, right? We don't want something that will rot. Or favorite texture like Velcro or felt or fluffy carpet, whatever it is. Or maybe just looking at a photo of their family or their brother or someone like that can help them as well. And getting enough sleep is a huge tool in helping maintain regulation that we don't have a lot of control over our students when they go home, but we sure can teach them the importance of getting enough sleep. The older they are, they can buy into that, and they can regulate it themselves, even if their families are not. So this links to an article with the recommended sleep for each grade level. And then having those Tostios, gum, and mints available as going to help with the maintaining regulation.
Kara, I wanted to let you know you have just under 15 minutes.
Thank you. And so these are tools that are going to help you regain regulation. So they've started to lose control a little bit. Maybe they're in that yellow moving toward orange range. And so they need that bigger intervention now. And so there are lots of great calming apps that you can put on iPads or iPods. Our school invested in a set of iPods for virtual reality. And then we also were able to use a couple of those for calming apps that we would keep in our calm down spaces. And so Stop Breathe Think's a really good one. And what's nice about them, if you've never used one, is you open them up and it'll ask you, how you doing today? How you feeling physically? And then how you feeling mentally? And you tell it. And then based on that, it gives you an idea of what might be a good strategy or a good listen for you to help you get back to sick. And then they can choose whatever they want to do. And then somebody comes onto their ears and will tell them, walk them through a breathing routine. Sometimes they'll say, get up, walk around your space, stretch way up to the ceiling. And so it's like 5 minutes or less, and it talks them through something to get them refocused on regulation. So it's really amazing. And Go Noodle is a website that has some really great movement activities, and there's a lot of yoga on there. And I've used lots of them to, when we come back from lunch, we just tend to be a little bit unregulated, all of us. And so after that running around time in the gym or recess or lunch, you can do one of those with the kids to model how that can help them reground and be able to focus better. And then we go into some things that take a little more time, like coloring, drawing, music, exercise, all of those things we talked about before. And funny videos actually is on there because my students gave me that list when we were trying to list things. I had so many students that said just watching funny YouTube videos is going to help me. And I was like, they just want an excuse to watch those ridiculous videos, right? But no, it really did. Turns out laughing helps you feel better. It's research based, but I had this mental thing of, yeah, YouTube, right? I feel like on YouTube, but I did, and it worked. So I really highly recommend that you listen to your kids and ask them what will work for them, not what will work for you, because we can be completely off on that. And then the emotion cards, I already talked to you about how you can make those. That's a free and affordable regulation tool. I mean, I think like a whole box of these cards, enough to make 40 sets, is like $10 on Amazon. So we're not talking big spending here. And probably 1,000 of the little rings are $10. But you also could use a twisty tie. You could put a piece of yarn through there and tie it. It really doesn't matter. Calm down bottles, those things that have like glitter, and you shake the bottle and the glitter goes slowly. And so there's 11 different kinds here and a video that shows you how to make them. Another set of do-it-yourself fidgets. If you go to this website, it's going to show you how to make all kinds of fidgets that kids will enjoy. But my favorite thing is just to go garage sailing. That junk box that sometimes has free or 5 for $1 on it, those are the kind of things that aren't worth very much to many people, but they can be great as a fidget alternative. There might be some little, McDonald's Happy Meal toys or old fidgets that their kids are sick of that they put in there. And they're not really worth anything, but they're worth something in your bucket for people to use. And it also allows you the opportunity to sometimes just give one to a child, like it really working for them, and to let them have it. And if they lose and it doesn't come back, it's not a big deal. You didn't invest very much money in it. Goodwill is another great place. And honestly, just family and friends, if you put out there what you're looking for, you want to be a little more specific, or they'll be like, yay, it's free for all dump at Kara's house. No, you don't want that. So you might say the type of things you're looking for, things that have different textures, things that are less than the size of a baseball, but I've had family and friends donate so many things to me that way. And Nair, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right, is a web program, and I've linked so you can sign up. You have to be working for a non-for-profit to use it, but they have amazing deals on cheap stuff. Like when fidget spinners were like the big thing, I got 100 fidget spinners for 4 cents a spinner, because they buy up surplus from places and then sell it to nonprofits. Your school can create an account so that you could use budget money for it, and you can create an account yourself as well. So either way, but check out Nair because they have tons of things. They have all kinds of school supplies. You even can find backpacks. If let's see, our school has a like a care closet where we keep extra underwear and pants and shirts for kids because various things happen throughout the school's day, right? You can find clothing there, markers, all kinds of craft supplies, things you wouldn't even think are craft supplies. We stocked our first maker space off of things in Nair, things that, like there was this foam athletic tape that they wrap around after they tape you. It was all different colors. Who knows why they had it there, but we used it for our makerspace and it was fun. And so ask people if somebody has something and you think, oh, that would be great. Or ask people to donate money. The worst you get is no, and you're the same place you are, right? It's not so bad to hear no, but you might get a yes and you're better off. So take that risk and ask. And then last but not least, don't forget about yourself. Educators need to self-regulate as well, because co-regulation is key to helping everyone stay regulated. The last thing you want is a dysregulated adult trying to help a dysregulated kiddo, because nobody's probably going to end up feeling regulated at the end of that conversation. So make sure there's a staff first aid station as well for your amygdala reset. This can be like little essential oils. This can be gum and mints. This can be just a comfy chair in the teacher's lounge, whatever it is. But we adults need some place to go to regroup ourselves. It's hard working with kids all day. Our jobs are hard and we need to take care of ourselves. And we can't help kids regulate if we're not regulated. And so my last piece of advice is switch adults. If you feel yourself getting to that yellow, push the button, get the office staff to switch you out with another staff. Have a plan in place. We had a procedure for that at my school where if we called the office and said, I need a dysregulation switch, then there was a procedure they went through. They would check if the other special education teachers or the teaching assistants were available, and then the special ed director and the counselor and the principal. Like, it was a lot of training that was gone through to make this work, but it is so worth it in the end. So advocate for it, because we need people regulated so everyone can do what they're supposed to do correctly. Time for questions, but I think we'll just skip that over. If you can put them in chat along, and then there's an evaluation, and that's in the Whova app. Is that right, Abby?
Yes, there is a survey, and I've actually shared that link in both the Zoom chat and in the Whova app.
Okay.
And also, Kara, just so you're aware, there's been a lot of chatting about different kinds of fidgets and bubble pops and different items.
Those bubble poppers, yes, they're everywhere.
Yes, yes. And so people have been sharing, and that, as my understanding is that all of that conversation will stay in that chat area if you link to Kara's presentation through the agenda on the actual Whova app.
Oh, great. Okay, yeah, that'd be nice. So we do have just about 4 minutes. If anybody has a question, you're welcome to put in the chat. I'm going to slide up to the beginning and go to the link for the presentation, because I know some people came in after I showed that. If I can figure out how to do that. There we go. So this link right here, you can take a picture of it so you have it later, or you can copy it down, and then you'll have links to everything that I have linked in the slide, so it'll be easier for you to get to. And thanks so much for the opportunity. This is a fantastic event, and thanks to those who attended. Let your friends know they can watch it on replay and get all the good stuff. I'm planning to do that because I have been swamped these last 2 days. I'm one of those people that registers and is like, whoo, glad it's on replay.
Yes, Kara, thank you so much. There was also a lot in the chat for, thanking you for so many practical resources. So
You're welcome.
the group very much appreciated that. And Kara is correct that everything is recorded. And the goal is to have all of the recordings uploaded to the Whova app within 48 hours. So you'll have access to that if you want to come back, and if you missed a section or a part and would like to review, you would be welcome to come back to this presentation at that point in time. So at this time, if we don't have any additional questions, Kara, I'm going to stop the recording and thank all of you for attending today. Very much appreciated, and happy 4th.
Yeah.
Just double checking one last time, Kara, to make sure we didn't have any other questions. I don't see any on either platform, so I will go ahead and stop the recording.